We are creatures of desire. What we most desire is meaning. What makes us suffer most is a lack of meaning.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Marital therapist, author, and communications trainer Andrew G. Marshall invites guests from all walks of life to discuss what makes life meaningful.
Hello, I'm Andrew G. Marshall. Welcome to The Meaningful Life. We're available on Apple, Spotify, Podbean, and wherever you find your podcasts. Have you ever set a goal for yourself, believed in it 100%, but something inside made you sabotage it? Welcome to your shadow, the unconscious, forbidden parts of ourselves that we keep hidden away. It is something that most people deny and disown. So if you've ever spotted your self-sabotage impulses, that's a step in the right direction. But we're going to go even further today by not only meeting our shadow, but by romancing it. My witness is retired Jungian therapist and author Connie Zweig PhD, who makes a welcome third visit to the podcast. Connie has two new editions of two of her books, Meeting the Shadow, The Hidden Power of the Dark Side of Human Nature, and Romancing the Shadow, Break Unconscious Patterns and Create Conscious Relationships with Shadow Work. Her new podcast, Dr. Neil's Spiritual Awakening to Non-Duality, posts on all podcasts. She starts the first book with a beautiful quote from the poet Robert Frost. Something we're withholding made us weak until we found it ourselves, which I think is a beautiful idea. So welcome to the podcast, Connie. And what was it about the Frost quote that drew you to it?
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction, Andrew. You know, the theme of the shadow has been timeless in literature and mythology. Once we start to see it, we see it everywhere. And I hadn't quite seen it in that way before, as a weakness that's a gift. And so just that phrase touched me. And I think there's so many ways that people have tried to verbalize this and conceptualize it. And it's really slippery. It's not just like one of those concepts that you understand it and then that's all there is to it. It's quite complex and slippery.
So what exactly is the shadow, and how long did it take you to take your own one seriously?
Well, when I first published Meeting the Shadow, which is an anthology, it's a collection of 65 different essays about every single arena of human life and how the shadow appears in our families, in our bodies, in our relationship, our health, our politics, our workplace, our creativity. It was stunning to me. And I realized that there were very few people really exploring this theme deeply in a way that took us beyond the ideas and into the applied practicality. How can we work with the shadow? So somehow my career just unfolded that way. It wasn't really intentional, Andrew. I didn't say, okay, I'm going to become an expert on the shadow and here I go. It just kind of unfolded that way. When Meeting the Shadow came out, it struck a chord with people. And, you know, today we see the weaponization of the shadow and of shadow projection all over the world by our political leaders and our religious leaders. We can talk more about that. So my publishers thought it was a good time to reissue the books with some new writing. So there's some new writing in Meeting the Shadow. And then with Romancing the Shadow, that was how I developed the method of shadow work, how people can work with this slippery, tricky part of ourselves that's so omnipresent and so self-sabotaging and so harmful to others. What can we do about it? And so Romancing the Shadow is really about that. And that publisher came to me as well. They came to me separately and said, let's put some new writing out and reissue these books.
So let's define the shadow in a way that everybody listening will understand and have some sense of their own shadow.
Okay. So naturally and inevitably, when we're little, when we're small kids, we're like little sponges and we start taking in the messages from adults. This is good and this is bad. This will give you love and approval, and this will give you punishment, criticism, shame, right? And unknowingly, this is going on. First with our parents, our grandparents, our teachers, our clergy people. We're getting these messages about, in theological terms, what's sinful and will send us to hell, and what's positive and will send us to heaven. Or in psychological terms, what's accepted by society and what's not acceptable, and what will lead us to disapproval, or in some cases, shaming and punishment.
And what's going to get us our mother's and father's love.
Exactly, which is really the primary goal when we're so dependent as small kids. So the ego starts to develop by carrying the positive traits, the approved of traits in our conscious personality. We don't think this, but we start being caring or polite, nice, caregiving, smart, whatever's approved of in the family, right? And that which is not approved of goes into the personal unconscious, which Jung called the shadow. So the ego and the shadow are developing in tandem. And one is carrying the material that could be talents or wishes, behaviors, beliefs, feelings. And the other one is carrying all of those that are deemed forbidden or unacceptable or even repulsive in that family or in that church community or in that school. And so those are developing together as we grow up. And then what happens, we become teens or young adults, and all that energy, that charge that has built up in the shadow starts to erupt. So maybe it erupts in cigarette smoking or some disapproved of behavior, right? Sexuality, cursing, and it sabotages us with the people whose approval we're seeking. And it makes us look rebellious. But in fact, there's a message hidden in the shadow every time it erupts. Or we're late for school. Let's say it's a procrastinator. We're always late. What is the information that's hidden in that shadow? I call it a shadow character. In that part of the shadow that's acting out in a self-sabotaging, procrastinating way. What is it trying to tell us? Or we're in a relationship, an ongoing relationship, and we keep criticizing our partner. And why are we doing that when we see that the consequences are harmful? It hurts him or her. It creates distance. It doesn't create the intimacy we long for. So why do we keep doing it? So there are messages encoded in these shadow characters that we can learn to hear and understand more deeply. And then we can make different changes in our behavior and have a different kind of quality of life.
And the shadow and projection go hand in hand, don't they? In fact, often the easiest way to spot what's in your shadow is what upsets you about other people. So, thoughtless people. I hate thoughtless people. These are terrible people. They never think of other people. What might you be suspicious of, Connie, if I was coming to you and saying these things?
So, we meet the shadow every day in many, many ways. And one of them is in projection, which is a psychological defense mechanism by which we protect ourselves because the shadow attributes to other people something we don't want to see in ourselves. So it may be a quality, as you're expressing, thoughtlessness or uncaring, lack of empathy, that we don't see in ourselves. We can't imagine that that's a part of us. And so we put it on the other. And we have an emotionally exaggerated reaction to the other who may be a stranger. We may know nothing about them. And yet we're imagining, oh, she's so lazy, or he's so aggressive, or she's so seductive, right? Or he's so greedy. And whatever the trait is, if we recognize that we're projecting, we can take a breath and stop for a moment and ask ourselves, is that my shadow? Is that something I'm refusing to see in myself? And why is that? Why am I attributing it to that other person who I don't even know? And then this happens in groups, Andrew. So you're part of a religious community and everybody else is going to hell. They're infidels and you're the only ones who are saved, right? Or in a political community where you have the truth and all the other people are wrong in their point of view, whether it's progressive or conservative. And we do that with whole countries. And this is the root of war throughout human history. Every war is rooted in shadow projection, enemy making, attributing to the others like Israel and Palestine, like Russia and Ukraine, and now with Iran, attributing to others what we don't want to see in ourselves and what looks like the worst possible belief or the worst possible dogma or behavior to us. And in some cases, the projection fits, right? I mean, we might say to ourselves, that country is really totalitarian, and it is. So there are cases in which the projection fits, and that can happen with an individual too. But what I'm mostly concerned about is the cases where it doesn't fit, and especially in our intimate lives and our family lives and our friendships, where we're attributing to others and creating conflict that doesn't need to be there.
Well, as you know, I'm a couple therapist, so I'm particularly interested in how this works in couples, because it's very easy to say the problem in my relationship is you.
Yes, the blame game. So what we learn in Romancing the Shadow is a particular method for couples, for working with these parts of ourselves that we project or attribute to the other person. And when we learn how to detect the projection and how much it's coloring our dynamic with our partner, and we learn how to begin to reclaim the projection and be accountable for it. So instead of saying it's you, we say it's me. I have a wound here, Susie, and I need to talk to you about it because I've been projecting it onto you. And I'm starting to see it's in me. This trigger or this wound, this button is in me. And I want to talk with you about how we can work with it. So let me give you just a brief description of the method. Let's say it's that critic. And every time my husband's getting dressed and ready for work, I start to criticize what he's wearing. And I tell him to change his clothes. And I tell him he's making bad decisions. He doesn't look good for work. So what happens? Of course, the consequence is he's hurt or he's irritated and he distances and he leaves without a kiss or without saying goodbye, right? Why am I doing that? So what I suggest to people is they start to listen to what they're saying to themselves as the critic comes up. Whatever the shadow character is, the controller, the addict, the abandoned child, the procrastinator, whatever the shadow character is, it always has the same inner dialogue. So for the critic, it's always saying the same thing. I wish he were different. I wish he looked different. I wish he acted different. And with that inner dialogue, they're the same feelings. And if it's easier for you to access your feelings than your thoughts, you start to notice what are the feelings that are coming up and what are the bodily sensations that are coming up. So maybe the feeling is discomfort or dislike or feeling abandoned because he's leaving for work or feeling distant, right? And the bodily sensations, maybe the stomach is tight or the shoulders are tight or the legs are numb, right? What is going on in the body? So now you have 3 cues that the critic is here. It's emerging from the unconscious. Thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations. And you give it a name, the critic. And you give it an image, just what you did, that pointing finger, right? You're going to blame him and point at the other person. Now you have 5 cues. Instead of having this amorphous mass of shadow that you can't do anything with, you have a particular figure in your psyche that's arising that you can identify. And before you make that critical comment, you can take a breath and catch it. Oh my God, the critic is here. And it turns out that every shadow character has a valid need because they formed in our childhood and they formed as protectors to protect us from something. So when you start to explore the critic and you recognize that the consequence of acting it out is distance with your partner, but you're making the distance unconsciously. What if you made the distance consciously? Because that's a valid need, to have separateness, to have boundaries. And you said to your partner, I'm going to go out tonight, so, get yourself dinner and I'll see you at bedtime. I need some space. I need some space. Not you are doing this or you are wearing that to get distance, but consciously, intentionally. I need some space. I love you and I'll see you at bedtime. So now the valid need of the critic is being met with intention. It's being met consciously, and the unconscious doesn't have to act it out in a harmful way.
And if we have a critic that is being critical of our partner, what I nearly always find is actually this inner critic is being incredibly critical of you too.
Yes. So the inner critic might be protecting you from some kind of awareness by projecting it out onto the other person. So sometimes when you make the criticism about him or her, you're protecting yourself from criticizing yourself, right? So that inner critic, in psychology we call it the superego, that inner critic can be worked with in the same way. You might say to yourself, I'll never be successful. I'm not smart enough. I'm not quick enough. I'm not educated enough. I'm not young enough. Whatever it is, and you recognize that repeating inner voice and the feelings that go with that. Maybe there's a feeling of emptiness or sadness with that inner dialogue, and the sensations that go with it. Your shoulders get saggy and you feel small. Your body feels small. And you can trace each shadow character back into childhood. That's another part of it, to recognize its origins, where it came from. So where were you getting those messages that you're not good enough? Where did that come from? And you begin to work with that inner critic that's directing it at you in the same way as the critic that's directing it outside of you. And you begin to use self-observation to notice, now I'm doing that. What are the consequences of it? And what do I want to do differently? And one thing that's really important with shadow work is to have a centering practice, because someone might have an inner critic that's really harsh and painful and overwhelming and loud, right? And it's difficult to observe it if it sort of takes over your whole psyche and colors everything in that color, right? It's overshadowing. So you want to have a meditation, a mindfulness, a chanting, a prayer practice, something to be able to center yourself, a belly breathing practice, and come back to your center. And from that point, observe that inner critic. Oh, now I can watch that voice. It's not me. It's not who I am. It's not my true nature. I am not that critic and that bad child. And you take a breath and you come back to your center. And this is why I say shadow work is a spiritual practice, because we're learning self-observation and centering as we're dealing with these shadow characters.
So what I'm hearing is that rather than disowning the shadow, we need to, as you say, romance it and to actually listen to it, because if we have a relationship with our shadow, we're going to have a better relationship with not just ourselves, but everybody else in the world. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, romance it means having a conscious relationship with it. So it's not about stuffing it back down. It's not about integrating it into the ego. I don't use that word. It's about observing it, recognizing it's not who you are, and making different choices. And the more you're able to observe it and objectify it outside yourself, like let's say, speak to it out loud. Hi, critic, I see you. You're here. Okay, you're about to say something to my husband. I'm going to take a breath. What do I need now instead of criticizing him? What do I need, not the critic, to recognize that the critic is not who I am. And as you begin to objectify it and observe it, it starts to lose its charge. The more unconscious it is, the more charge it has, the more control it has over you. So as you begin to objectify it, and some people draw the shadow character, some people write a letter to it, you find an image, what does it look like? And you begin to play with that image and that name. And as you observe it outside of yourself, it loses its grip. And slowly, slowly, it starts to recede in your psyche.
And once it's lost its grip, you can actually see, for example, there might be some perfectly valid things that you're trying to get from your partner. And there probably is a different way of getting it. So when you're calm and the shadow is not leaping up and down and waving its knickers in the air, you can have a calm conversation that, it's really important to me that, that the toilet is properly cleaned or whatever it is that's actually at the bottom of what it is you're trying to say. But you can say it in a way that's, as I say, not so charged with all of this unconscious, unprocessed old material.
Yes, so you're living in the present moment. You're not reacting from the past. And in the present moment, you use I statements, not you statements. Have you ever noticed when you hear a you statement, you instantly get defensive? So you continually come back to accountability and I statements and your own experience. And this allows your partner to stay open and receptive to you.
One of the things I try and teach my couples is to try and have a conversation without actually using the word you. You can say I, and you can say we, and you can say the message I receive is X, Y, Z, rather than you say.
Yes.
But it is actually quite difficult. It takes quite a long time to actually, you want to say you, and it's really difficult. But if you can do it, it is just the most beautiful way of communicating.
Yes. I think most of us were raised with you. We saw our parents doing it to each other. They did it to us. It's a lifelong habit to break. And when you do, it changes everything. It really changes everything. The space opens up and becomes safe.
And your partner won't be so defensive because the minute you say you, I'm immediately beginning to work on my defenses. The reasons why it's not me, it's you.
That's right. And the minute you say, this is my wound or my shadow, and I'm going to work on it, then it's an invitation to the other person to do the same.
And I'm the expert on me. So if I say I feel upset when the toilet is not clean, well, you can't have an argument about that because I'm the world's expert on how I feel. We're not talking about standards of toilet cleanliness, which is, probably could be a debate that could go on for weeks about how often a toilet should be cleaned. Whereas my opinions of it, I feel this, that's my opinion.
So let's kind of extend this into other relationships, Andrew. For older people, this can work with adult children. It can work with friendships. It can work in the workplace with your boss or your coworkers. If you begin to use I statements, the atmosphere changes and people feel less attacked and they feel safer.
So how can our shadow be sabotaging us? Say, for example, and here we have a good example, my goal is to meditate 5 times a week, but somehow I keep on getting sabotaged. It's probably something I'm doing myself. So how does the shadow work with sabotage?
So we all have these intentions, like New Year's resolutions, We intend certain habits. Maybe we want to change how we eat or sleep or meditate or do a creative project or make a deadline. And we all have parts of us that sabotage these. So for you, who in you, so when was the last time you intended to meditate, but you didn't?
I did this morning, but I didn't yesterday.
Okay. And so yesterday morning, what was going on with you? Do you remember what you were thinking or feeling or doing?
Yes, I was thinking there's this project I need to get in. And the first thing in the morning is the best time to meditate. It's also the best time to break the back on a project. So I thought, I really need to do this project. I mean, I could have done it later, but I didn't. I sort of shuffled the meditation to one side.
Okay. And how were you feeling when that happened?
How was I feeling? Well, I was really pleased that I managed to break the back on the project, but I was a bit annoyed the next day because if I meditate on a regular basis, my mind is calmer and my meditation is better. And so the next day when I hadn't, it was a little bit more all over the place. So I was a bit annoyed with myself.
Okay. Do you notice any bodily cues when you're saying to yourself, I have to do that?
I think I become a little bit sort of, not hyper, but I'm sort of, there's more adrenaline running.
Yes.
I think that's the thing, more adrenaline.
Yes. Okay. So let's give this part a name. You're saying to yourself, I have to do this. I have to break the back of the project.
Dutiful, Andrew.
Okay. So how about the dutiful doer?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay. So what is the image of the dutiful doer?
Oh, I've suddenly got a picture of a good boy going to school, I have to say.
Okay. So there he is. How old is he?
8 or 9, possibly.
Okay. And how does he feel about going to school?
Dutiful.
Okay. So there's this part of you, and this is true for most of us. Our shadow characters are young because they form at those ages, those early years, right? So the dutiful doer is going to school, or he's breaking the back of a project. And what are the consequences of being dutiful and following through on those projects for your commitment to yourself to meditate?
Well, it's disastrous because there's always something that somebody wants from you, isn't there?
There's always going to be another duty, right? And somehow you've set up meditation as not doing, as against the dutiful doing.
Well, the problem with the meditation is this is purely for me. I don't have somebody who's saying you should do it, who I would be upsetting if I didn't do it. I wouldn't. It's not a case I'm not going to pass the exam or something like that. It's just something that's purely for me. Whereas, my partner wants this project wants this. There's people there who want things. Whereas with the meditation, that's sort of just for me.
And therefore, it's
less valid, I suppose.
Anything else?
No, I just think less valid.
Okay. Is it selfish?
No, I'm not going to go as strongly as saying it's selfish. I think
Okay.
I have managed to evolve a little bit more from
Okay.
that.
So it's less valid because it's not with or for somebody else.
Exactly. I obviously have quite a strong desire to serve.
Or maybe to please.
And to please, yes.
Okay. So you can see kind of the split in your psyche, right? And the dutiful doer is protecting you from feeling that you're going to do something just for yourself, right? It's going to keep you in that good boy position so that you get the love and approval and praise from whoever is asking for something, whether it's the parent or the teacher or the partner.
Or the project manager.
You're fulfilling a role in that dutiful way.
Mm-hmm.
And meditation is free of all that. And so we can see how the meditation carries a different value, a whole different value system than the one that this shadow character carries. Whether it's a partner or a therapist, which is also serving others, right? The meditation is sitting still alone. It carries a whole different weight, whole different set of values, right? So how do you see that now as I say that?
Well, I'm certainly more conscious of the desire to please and to be a good boy. So that is much more aware. And actually, if I hadn't have broken the back on that project, it wouldn't have mattered.
Okay.
So maybe I could challenge that dutiful doer a little bit more and say, actually, it's okay to do something for me.
There you go. Or to engage in non-doing.
Yeah, non-doing is rather difficult sometimes, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, because we live in this workaholic world. This is what I deal with people in retirement, moving from what I call the doer in the Inner Work of Age book. And the doer is so filled with this duty stuff, being a provider, right? Being a contributor, being in service, and so on. And letting go of that to move into retirement. And what does retirement mean to the dutiful boy?
Well, at this precise moment, he's ignoring it altogether. I'm old enough to retire, but am I planning to retire? I've cut down from 5 days to 4 days. I mean, it's a step in the right direction, but the dutiful doer is still marching on.
Right. So I brought that up just to say that these shadow characters show up at different stages in the lifespan. And we have this conscious intention, whether it's to slow down and meditate or slow down and retire or even take a vacation. And then the dutiful doer or the provider or the whatever we want to call it, the caregiver, comes up and blocks that intentional direction. And it's really important to look at what that's about in each of us.
Rather than pressing on and trying harder. Because
exactly.
The dutiful doer is then going to complain louder.
And, all these parts have valid needs. It's not that one is bad and the other's good. And that's part of what happens when people split. The dutiful doer isn't bad. It's given you a successful life.
And a happy partner.
Yeah.
Or happy-ish partner.
Yeah. And at the next moment, it becomes the saboteur. From having kind of allowed our egos to really develop and have a fulfilling career and a fulfilling marriage. And then it starts to sabotage us. When another part of us wants to be more contemplative, be more still.
Or wants to lose weight or exercise or whatever it is.
Exactly. Whatever the issue, whatever the conscious intention, right?
So we're going to look at a particular problem in a moment, and we're going to see if there's any shadow involved in that, and that's in just a second.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material and other benefits.
I'm currently putting the finishing touches to my men's retreat. It runs from Sunday the 28th of September through to Wednesday the 1st of October in the woods just outside Berlin in Germany. Thank you to all the men who've signed up. If you want to go deeper, understand yourself better, learn about the key male archetypes, and to make better relationships, it's not too late to sign up. The single rooms have all gone, but I still have a few places in the shared accommodation. I've also been hearing from men who would like to attend but are busy between the 28th of September and the 1st of October and want to know if I will be running the retreat again. The good news is that I have booked the same seminar house next year for Thursday the 9th of April to Sunday the 12th of April. Please put the dates in your diary for 2026. If you would like to sign up for this September, go to andrewgmarshall.com. Click on the button Men's Retreat. Do it now. And I look forward to meeting you and working with you.
Podbean, your message amplified.
Ready to share your message with the world? Start your podcast journey with Podbean.
Podbean, the AI-powered all-in-one podcast platform.
Thousands of businesses and enterprises trust Podbean to launch their podcasts.
Use Podbean to record your podcast.
Use Podbean AI to optimize your podcast.
Use Podbean AI to turn your blog into a podcast.
Use Podbean to distribute your podcast everywhere.
Launch your podcast on Podbean today.
you'd like to participate in the program, send in a letter. You can go to the website andrewgmarshall.com, have a look at the details of my men's retreat there as well, and you'll find a section called Participate in the Program. My wife was involved in a cult along with her family when she was a child. Although she left when she was in her early 20s, it left a big mark on her. She is not surprisingly down on all religions, describing them as nonsense and illogical. I'm sorry for what happened when she was young, but the older I get, the more drawn I am to start seeking the big questions. What happens when we die? How do we live knowing we are mortal, rather than closing our eyes and ears? And something I would describe as, there's got to be something more than this, but what? I've been taking lessons in an animist faith, but my wife thinks I'm being pulled into a cult. She complains that I don't tell her what I'm doing, which is true, because I just get a lot of scorn. She thinks it's pulling us apart, which I suppose is true. However, I feel I have to follow my own heart, which says I'm a spiritual person and I want a framework. How do I be respectful of my wife's non-beliefs, but stick up for my sort of beliefs or search for beliefs? So, Connie, any thoughts on this?
Lots. I wrote a whole book on this, Andrew. It's called Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path. And it's about why we're drawn to charismatic leaders and cult-like groups and beliefs, and how we can do spiritual shadow work to uncover what's going on inside of us and inside of others and in the group dynamic, and to sort of address these existential questions that our listener is bringing up, either in a community or outside of a community. And I wrote this book because I started TM, Transcendental Meditation, when I was very young. And it was a really wonderful experience for me to be able to quiet my mind. However, after a few years, I started to notice that there were sort of coercive and hypocritical things going on in the community and with the founder of TM. And I left the community, and it was heartbreaking, like this person's wife. It was very formative for me, but it was also very heartbreaking to have to separate from the group. And I read this poem by Goethe called The Holy Longing, and I decided that was what I was going to explore. What is this spiritual yearning that we have for the divine, for the transcendent, for God? What is that so many people feel, this restless, whispering yearning? And I ended up writing my dissertation about this and then writing that book to try to understand it. And I really believe that this longing is valid, that it's a guide, that it's a whisper from the soul, from the human soul. But what happens so often is it leads us awry. It leads us to a place, to a teacher or a clergy person who acts out their shadow, because that person, even if he's spiritually awake or not, mostly not, hasn't worked out all their shadow issues. And so power, sex, and money, three big arenas for the shadow, are the three big areas that come up in spiritual or religious trauma and abuse. So I interviewed many, many people. I told many stories of teachers who acted out their shadows, which is kind of epidemic right now in every denomination. It's not just in one denomination, it's in every single one, because it's human, because the human shadow is a part of everyone. And I really worked for many years to understand what this person is asking. So in terms of addressing him personally, I would say you might do some reading together with your wife. I would suggest my book, but there are many other books you could look at about how our seeking, when one person is a seeker and the other one is disillusioned, has been burned, how do you work together to respect each other's timing, each other's needs in this way? Maybe you can find a community that is safe for both of you And maybe you can't. Maybe you'll be on different paths for a while. But I basically want to say you can find understanding about this, which you can share with each other. And I think if you have that common ground, this is why humans seek God or transcendence. This is what can happen from it. This is where she is at on her path, and this is where you're at on your path. And you can kind of honor each other. If you feel scorn when you talk to her, then you need to say, I'm feeling scorned. I feel unsafe. Can you change the way you communicate with me? And see, just like Andrew and I were talking about earlier, and see if you can work with some of those shadows that are erupting in the communication process so that this difference between you doesn't end up separating you. It's possible to be on separate paths and still remain together.
So just putting your statement into an I statement, so I feel scorned, is it possible to communicate in a different way? So there's no you in it.
Yes, because I want to feel safe. I want to share with you. I want to share what I'm learning and what I'm feeling. I want to be close to you.
And there's a lot of good points that are being made that I would like to hear, and I'd like to hear them in a way that's not going to make me defensive.
Yes.
So we've talked a lot about the shadow. Is there anything that we've missed out about the shadow that's important for people to understand?
The other book, The Inner Work of Age, Shifting from Role to Soul, extends shadow work into midlife and beyond. And so for our older listeners who might be interested in shadow work later in the lifespan, that's also available to you. So there are these 4 books, and you can kind of get your foot wet, get your toes wet in this pool in any of those different ways. I think what I'd like to say, Andrew, is that in our world right now, in the global politic, shadow work, shadow projection really has been weaponized. And we can see it as a root in racism, in sexism, in ageism, in homophobia, in transphobia, in immigrant phobia. And in so many countries around the world now, there's this contagion of shadow projection. And it's leading to the polarization and the hatred and the bias that we're all witnessing. So if our listeners can just take a few minutes each day and contemplate your own shadow, are you projecting it onto others? What can you be more accountable for so that you personally are not adding to the darkness, so that you are beginning to add to the light of awareness about the shadow and have more empathy and more compassion, even from people with differences, like this couple who wrote the letter, even from people who are in a different moment, in a different belief system, in a different culture or ethnicity, to begin to own our own shadow material so that we're not contributing to this darkness that's falling on the world right now. That's my invitation.
And if you're interested in the whole idea of shadow work in getting older, that was the first time that Connie and I met. So you can look at that episode. And we also talked about the shadow in religious communities and as well on another edition of the program. So normally I ask people what makes their life meaningful, but when they come back again, I ask what they've done recently that they've found meaningful. So I wonder what over the last few days or weeks have you done that's been meaningful to you?
My husband and I have been contemplating a move to a retirement community, and I've been looking for places to go for about a year, and we just found a place. So we're preparing to move to another city and another community, and I'm feeling, this shift that you were describing from all of the doing, the productivity, and the meaningful work to a more quiet and contemplative stage of life. And I'm really finding meaning in that and looking forward to it. There's a lot of uncertainty. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know my way around the other city, and I don't know the people who live there. But there's a sense of anticipation and feeling good that we're preparing. I'm 76 years old. I want to be prepared for when I need care and when my husband needs care. So each stage of life has meaning. Each stage of life has its own holy longing. And as we continue to do our practices, our contemplative practices, our meditation, and our shadow work, we uncover more and more about ourselves as human beings. And that, for me, is a meaningful life.
So in the bonus material, we're going to be discussing shadow work and the psychology of evil. But if you want to hear the bonus material, you can subscribe directly via Apple or Spotify. And if you want to become a supporter of The Meaningful Life and unlock the bonus material this way, here are the details.
You've been listening to The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. You can follow Andrew on Twitter, like him on Facebook, and please leave a review wherever you consume your podcasts. Making, editing, and distributing The Meaningful Life comes with substantial costs, and we'd like to ask for your help. Visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material for every program, send in a letter to be discussed by Andrew and his guests, and join a community of other people seeking to make their life meaningful. At the gold level, you get even more benefits. Production of The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall is by Michael Dooney. Social media by Madeleine Healy. Sound engineering and theme tune by Sebastian de la Luz Mendoza. And I'm Susie Colick. Please tell your friends and spread the word. Thank you.